looking at, you know, this time of year, mid-late August, we're looking at, real solid crops of food coming in, a lot of produce. So we'll look at where you find that, how to use it, even a little bit about how to grow it. To introduce myself, my name is April Byron. I'm a registered dietitian with a master's degree from Framingham State. My background is actually working with WIC and people with diabetes, doing some counseling there. I now do more education and work in a retail setting as well. So, but we get to talk about literally my favorite topic in the world. We're going to talk about food.
Ours too.
So some of the things I know I already went over. We're going to talk about seasonal eating, starting home gardens, orchards as well, like local orchards, local farms, local markets, tips for finding these foods, tips for using these foods, and some recipes. So the first, I keep thinking. So here's our agenda right here. I just went over that. So the first thing to kind of, I talked a little bit about local food, but let's go ahead and define it. The USDA defines local food as the direct or intermediated marketing of food to consumers that is produced and distributed in a limited geographic area, which sounds pretty straightforward, except that term limited geographic areas doesn't have a set definition itself. So there's no real set agreement on distance, and different retailers will have different parameters of what means local. But we'll go into ways to kind of get a better sense of what the growers and retailers that you're visiting are actually doing, because typically they can share. There's consumer demand for local food, so being able to answer questions is important. So what are some benefits of eating locally? The big one is the reduction in environmental impacts. The less distance traveled between producer and consumer is going to reduce that carbon footprint. It's basically fewer miles traveled, fewer gallons burned. Additionally, there's going to be less packaging and processing, and overall reduction in just time, processing time and travel time. You're going to get fresher and likely tastier food. Basically, when you're buying something straight from a farm at like a farmer's market or at their farm stand or through a CSA, they're pulling things out of the ground, rinsing it off, and putting it on their counters. It's that simple. A lot of times it was harvested that morning. So the other thing, there's an economic benefit in that these purchases go right back to a local business, a local entrepreneur. So what are some seasonal foods? So right now it's summer. These are the things you're going to see on shelves. I'm pretty sure people recognize most of these. The zucchini, tomatoes, green beans, those are pretty easy to find. Melons grow really well towards the end of the season, so we're going to see a lot of those. Apricots don't really grow here, but they are in season. So
is it better to eat your produce, to stick with what's really available, seasonally, as opposed to getting it from other areas where it's not?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think if you can do that, that's ideal. We'll talk a little bit about what we do in the winter when that's a bit harder. But it's going to be better to try and eat seasonally, not just because your food's going to be fresher and have a better taste to it. I mean, we all know what honeydew tastes like this time of year versus January. Or that melon that you get sometimes in a salad bar that just tastes like water. Yeah, it's, you're going to get a better product if you buy things in season. You're also going to save money. Those seasonal foods are going to be the ones that are in the front of the store, marked down. It's just how it is. So in the fall, again, these are all things I think pretty obvious. We all know we're going to start seeing pumpkins on people's porches in like a matter of weeks at this point. The social media posts of people in flannel picking apples are coming. So this fall produce is very much loved, and I think people are very well aware of it. But a lot of it, that summer produce, really does carry over into September. So it's nice that temperatures do start to cool off a little bit. We can still harvest zucchini and tomatoes, so we can actually do a little bit of cooking with them without feeling like we're getting too hot in our kitchens. And a lot of these fall products will hold up very well for storage. They store very well. Pumpkins, the apples, garlic, those all hold up really well. So here's some winter produce. The nice thing about winter is that even though it doesn't really grow in our area, it's when citrus foods start to come into their actual season. So we'll see a lot more oranges, grapefruits, and a lot of these are also storage crops too, so carrots, cabbage, those hold up well in your refrigerator. Onions will hold up in a cold basement or closet very easily. So. And there is something else I'd like to add about winter. As much as I would advocate eating locally, that end of winter, that February timeline, like January, February, March, when it's really hard to think about eating local food when everything's buried in snow, I think it's a great time to enjoy tropical fruits. Because they're in season in the tropics, and anything you buy is going to have to be shipped from that far anyways. So. And here we have fiddleheads, which I think all Mainers know very well. Which are our spring food that we see, and you'll also see some things that are the tropical foods as well. So lychee, jackfruit, mango, those start to come into their seasons when it's really cold here and hard to get excited about more spinach. These things come into the season, we can pick those up. So where can I buy local produce? Do you guys try to shop for local produce when you go? Like, do you go to have CSAs or farmers markets nearby that you like?
Yep, we do a CSA program here. So we have several people that sign up for that, whether they do it in the summer. We have one person, I think, in the spring that signed up, and then mostly summer CSAs, and then a couple fall CSAs as well, and then farmers markets.
Yeah, so CSAs are great. We don't really, the presentation doesn't talk too much about that, but they're a wonderful program because it gets funds into the hands of the farmers when they need it. It's, buying tools and equipment and seed can get very expensive. I think if anybody's done a home garden, those credit card bills start to add up. Imagine doing that for acres of land. So it's really good for the farmer. But there's also farmers market. You can do home gardens. Grocery stores are selling more and more local products, as well as just visits to local farms and orchards. So to find local farms and farmers markets, you guys have these links on your handouts here. Localharvest.org is a great option. You can actually select different types of local farms, local farmers markets, CSAs. You could say exactly what you're looking for. And there's also this USDA directory. There's the Farm Stand app. So if you travel and are looking for farmers markets, that's a good thing to have on your phone. You can also check out local newspapers, magazines, social media, ask your friends and family. I found the farmers market in my town on the Town of Scarborough website, their webpage. It was easy for me to find that there. Do you guys, I didn't check, is there a farmer's market in Augusta then?
Just a couple.
Yeah, so they're more and more popular and easier to find too now. I mean, and when I grew up in Millinocket, there was the hill where Peddler's Hill, and that's when people used to come through, the fish truck would come through, and people would buy fish off the back of the truck, which sounds crazy now, but that's what we always did. And fiddleheads, different types of produce, different fish, always coming in, and they were coming in with fresh products. So that's why asking around in your neighborhood is good. I think that people who move to Millinocket, which is rare, a rare occasion at this point, we just need to talk to the neighbors about, where do I get fresh local fish or fruits and vegetables? And there's that. So I understand did they just lose? You guys have done a number of conversations and presentations about gardening. So here's some more. You can always start a home garden. Really though, if you're going to do this, you're going to want to do your research. Like I would actually say, if you're going to start in the spring, in the next couple months, start thinking about what you want now, because right now is when you're consuming those foods and purchasing those foods. So think about what you're leaning towards, what you like, what you find you're using, so you can kind of get an idea of what you're going to need for your garden. You can think about what type of garden you want to start. Is it going to be, just straight out in a patch of land in your yard? Are you going to do raised beds, container gardens? Container gardens, there's more and more research for that now. People are doing really impressive things with container gardens. My uncle even has the biggest container garden I think I've ever seen. It's just been growing over the years. My grandfather started growing cucumbers in a bin, and now my uncle's taken over, and there's tomatoes and zucchini and the cucumbers and all kinds of stuff just growing out of these containers next to the driveway at the family camp. So,
like a raised bed or just something
containers,
different? Like plastic containers?
Yeah. Yeah, the reason he does that there is there's not much sun. So you can kind of rotate things, move them around, and have better control over the whole situation. Because of all the trees. You'll want to test your soil. You can purchase little kits. It's easy to do. Pick the plants that are going to work for you. If you don't get much sun, it might make more sense to focus on your greens. If you do get a lot of sun, go for the peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, things that really soak up a lot of heat. And even you could research and look into companion planting and things that can't be planted together. So there are things that interact well with each other and things that interact very poorly with each other. Apparently fennel grows poorly with everything. So, but one of the most well-known and traditional companion planting combinations is the Three Sisters. So stalks of corn grow up tall, the beans grow up around the stalks of corn, and the squash grows to cover as a ground cover. Tomatoes and garlic and basil grow well together. In general, foods that taste good together grow well together. Too. Like you'll read through these and you'll be like, oh yeah, those taste good together. You're going to want to water at an appropriate time. Basically, that just means avoid the hottest time of the day. You don't want to be encouraging the roots to go up to get the water, only for it to get overheated. And then just maintenance, fertilizing, weeding, harvesting when things are ready. We all know that tomatoes can burst over the course of the day, and a zucchini can go from just a tiny little baby to this huge zucchini that you can only do muffins or bread with. So some resources to look into are there's USDA home gardening website, American Horticultural Society. There's various blogs and apps like Garden Answers or Smart Plan. I will also throw in a plug for Old Farmer's Almanac. It's still good. It works, and they have a website now. So if you don't manage to get your hands on a copy, a lot of their information's on their website. Another one, if this is something you're really interested in and want to make the most of your garden here, where it's harder to grow later in the seasons, is there's a farm out in Castine that they've built hoop houses and various other forms to cover their plants and are actually able to grow produce year-round. They have types of, like kale, where they just go dust the snow and harvest it. So they're called the Four Season Farms. They've written 3 or 4 books, I think. They have a Facebook page. I read one of their books actually and read straight through because I was just like, this is so fascinating. That they're able to do this, but the argument was that here in Maine, where they were, latitudinally, was the same as southern France. So why can't we grow food the same? If we can just prevent it from getting frozen. So if they get enough sun, they just need to keep things from getting frozen. Or getting too cold, yeah.
Do you ever look through Mother Earth News?
A little bit.
Sometimes they focus on it, other times they don't. It's changed a lot over the years, but it's still a
Yeah.
pretty good resource for the kind of back to earth type stuff.
Yeah, well, I like the Four Season Farms, knowing what they're doing in their books, because it's so local to me.
Right.
So I think that's a good main resource. But if you have resources that you like to and you find them reliable, then stick with it.
Thank you.
They're clearly really good. So I should say full disclosure, when I say I'm a retail dietitian, I do work for Hannaford. But I did not actually provide this slide. So, but you will find more products at grocery stores. Finding local foods is something that consumers are interested in. They want to know where their foods are coming from. As much as we can find out, the better. So it's not just Hannaford that does this, but you will see these local signs. I know that at my stores, they indicate the name of the farm and what town the farm is located in. So you're going to see more and more things like that. But you might also see something just labeled local. Like there's products throughout the store like Cabot cheese, it's just labeled local. Well, that's from Vermont. And I think most of Vermont we kind of think of as a you can't get there from here kind of place. So, you really, not that Cabot isn't a wonderful product, but it's not that within a 100-mile radius that a lot of people use for their local definition. But when you see produce in the stores, more and more often you're going to find a very clear label about where it's coming from. And if you don't get the clear label, if it's not that clear, you can ask. So you say, oh, this says local, where is it from? And
you said 100 miles is typically?
that's what a lot of people look for,
Okay.
things within 100 miles. I see that a lot when I do reading on blogs and stuff about local eating. I think that's a bit short. It's hard.
Especially in Maine, because Maine is local, but it could be 250 miles away.
Right? I mean, is local, is an Aroostook County grown potato local to me in Scarborough at that point?
Mm-hmm.
It's,
Yeah.
I think people who set up that 100-mile radius live in big cities where lots of stuff is close. Even though it's going to be exactly at that 100 miles, because you have to go that far to get out of the suburbs at that point. So yeah, you'll see more signs like this that indicate where local is. So. Okay, so we'll talk a bit about how to prevent food waste. So let me just get a sense too, so we can break things up a little bit. What do you guys find that this is a problem? You go and you have the best of intentions to the farmer's market, and you bring home just huge bags of kale and different types of summer squash and tomatoes, and they had this locally foraged mushroom, any number of things, and then you're like, what do I do with this? do that. I get really excited about something. I'm like, oh, this looks amazing. I'm gonna bring this home.
Especially when you grow it and you grow way too much of it.
Yeah. That's something that I think a lot of people run into. I had that with tomatoes. That's a hard one to grow, I think, too much of, but I was a little overwhelmed by tomatoes one year. Because I started a whole bunch from seed thinking all the seeds would die. Like I just thought it was the first time I'd ever done anything from seed, and I thought they would all do terribly. They all did great, and I couldn't bring myself to throw any of them out. So I put them all in my garden, just had way too many tomatoes.
Yeah, we had that when we made spaghetti sauce out of our
Yeah.
tomatoes.
I did a lot of that, a lot of frozen.
It was either that or
spaghetti
thrown
sauce.
away.
I know, and you just don't want to throw it away.
Yeah. There are two, there are seed saving organizations too, where if you want to get some heirloom seeds, where people are just, they save their seeds and they're donating them and they're sharing them out there. So there's ways you could get free seed too, if you wanted to start doing things from seed. And lots of information about growing from seed.
We did a seed planting class.
Yeah.
And that was very interesting.
Because you can usually do it with stuff
Yeah.
around your house too. You don't necessarily need to make big investments and lots of plastic that doesn't really last more than a season. I've used old lettuce containers and egg cartons, like the paper towel rolls, things like that. They all work. So there's all kinds of ways to start from seed, but I think I've gotten off track. So how can we prevent food waste? So I think the big start right here is planning your meals. And I think this goes with if you're not even getting things from the grocery store. If you're getting things from, or from your garden, if you're getting them from the grocery store, if you're anything, it's best to, whatever you can do, make a plan. And I like to suggest that people reevaluate how their plate looks. Start with that My Plate guideline of half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. So that should be the focus of your meal, not the meat that you need to take out of the freezer, but what you're going to have for your fruits and vegetables. If you start there, you can look at what's in your refrigerator, what's on your counter, and say, how can I use this up? How much longer does this have? If I really need to use it. So, maybe you've got some zucchini and some cabbage, like that. You might want to try to use the zucchini before the cabbage. Look at those kind of variables and say, okay, well I have way too much zucchini. I'm going to make stuffed zucchini. And then you know to get out the rice and the brown rice and the ground turkey and the seasoning to go ahead and do something like that. Or I'm going to do zoodles, which I don't know if anybody's owned spiralizers and has gotten into that yet.
No.
You don't need to go purchase equipment. You take a vegetable peeler and your zucchini and just keep going through. We're going to rotate around a little bit and you have nice wide noodles. Put a little salt on it, let it sit for a few minutes to let the moisture come out, and you've got zucchini noodles without special tools that like clamp onto the side of your counter and cost a lot of money. So starting with that vegetable for your meals will help you, or that fruit or vegetable for your meals will help you to get through this produce and eat better. You'll be eating more fruits and vegetables that way. You can freeze produce for use in soups, sauces, smoothies, but you could also put them in some whole wheat pancakes. If you've got some blueberries, things like that. There's lots you could do. Berries are really the easiest thing I think of when it comes to freezing. You just lay it out on a sheet pan, stick it in your freezer. After you wash it, obviously, wash it, get all the extra twigs and stems. Put it in the sheet pan in your freezer, let it freeze, and then pour it into a bag. That's why it's not all clumped together. You have nice little individual berries. It's called, in World of Food Service, it's called IQF, individually quick frozen. So that's how you want to try and do any freezing that you're going to do at home.
with all produce that you freeze?
Unless you have a vacuum sealer in your, like, parboiling things. If you're doing like green beans and you're parboiling them, I think it's okay. If you seal it, you don't even need to buy a vacuum sealer, just like tighten it up real nice, that might work okay.
Yeah.
Or if you wanted to do a vacuum sealer, it cooks sous vide, which is just complicated. That would be, you could do that with frozen produce, but I find that individual spreading things out tends to work better. They thaw quicker and are just a little bit easier to work with, if you can do it. A lot of people like to do little freezer packs of vegetables though, so they'll do cut up chicken and peppers and onions, put some seasoning on that, and stick it in their freezer. And then they've got everything they need for, like, fajitas. Just throw it in a skillet sometime. So, you know, you don't have to be real precise with the freezer. Sometimes it's just cutting it up and washing it, cutting it, sticking it in your freezer, you're good to go. You can make sauces too. I've done tomatillo salsa. If anybody ever grows tomatillos, you're going to grow tomatillos for the rest of your life because they are like this very powerful weed. They reseed themselves. If you miss one, it's going to reseed itself and grow back into more tomatillos. Tomatillos?
What is it?
You ever had salsa verde, like at a Mexican restaurant? That's what usually what it's made in. It's not a tomato, but it looks a lot like a tomato when you peel back its husk. So it's what you would buy at the store. So usually, it might be near like the avocados and tomatoes, or it might be in more of the exotic fruits, even though they're very easy to grow in the Northeast. They're a green kind of berry with a green husk around it. You just peel off the husk and you can treat it like a tomato.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's what those salsa verde typically is tomatillos. Yeah, they're very tart. They're like very tart tomato. They're good though. So you know you can play with it. I often think of making sauces and freezing them as freezer canning. Because I'm a little bit apprehensive to take up canning, but if that's something you're interested in doing. Same with pickling. Just be very careful to follow the instructions and use reputable sources. Dehydrating fruits and vegetables is also fun. There's lots of tutorials now too on how to dehydrate things in your oven, like making fruit butters, which is, if you ever do some juicing, you can make fruit butters with the pulp. So, which, I don't know if you guys are interested in juicing, it's a good way to make sure you're getting the fiber. It's one of the criticisms for juicing is you're just getting sugar and vitamins and none of the fiber, which is important too for our health. So, you can store things in a root cellar, or like I do, a cold corner of my basement. That works too. Anytime you have scraps that you absolutely can't use, because you'd be surprised what you can still use, like tops of carrots can go into a stock. I save strawberry tops, and I will tell you more about that at a later slide. So there's all kinds of things that you can still do with a lot of food. But if you've really run out, go ahead, you can compost. It's usually just some way to contain the scraps. You will probably need an indoor compost bin just to collect things while you're inside that you take out. And just regularly turning the compost is pretty much the best thing you can do to get it to get going. And the other option is sharing with others, although I will suggest that everybody make sure they have consent and not leave baskets of zucchinis on their neighbor's doorsteps. That may not go over well. So some other tips for using the harvest from your garden. So those frozen fruits we talked about, the frozen berries in particular, are great for smoothies, sorbet, popsicles, flavored ice cubes. You can add frozen or dried herbs. So herbs are easy to freeze. You just dice them up and put them in a little olive oil in like a ice cube tray or similar.
Can you freeze them just by themselves, or you should put them in olive oil?
You can freeze them by themselves, but putting them in olive oil is going to kind of avoid them from getting the freezer burn and things like that.
Okay.
It melts right into your pan that way. So, in general, you're going to be most likely using them in something that you would add olive oil or butter to anyway, so. Unless you're putting them in like a smoothie or infused drink. But if you're doing that, you're not worried too much about the texture, it's all gonna get broken up. If you prep vegetables as soon as you harvest them, so by harvest, I mean you can purchase them, you can bring them in from your backyard, you can, maybe your neighbor left you a basket of zucchini on your front step. You go right ahead and wash, clean, peel, and cut those, you're more likely to use them. Even if it's just a snack. Those sliced up bell pepper strips, are going to be something that you can quickly grab for a snack, and you maybe will avoid the chips. So you can make pesto or other sauces to serve with fish, meats, vegetables, and pasta. And a lot of sauces will freeze really well, so that's something else to consider. You can make veggie fritters with just shredded vegetables, and something to bind it up, typically an egg, but if you can't do eggs, there's other options. Or frittatas, this is one of my favorites. So basically you just take your cooked vegetables, raw vegetables tend to release too much moisture, but something like spinach might work, but if you wanted zucchini or tomatoes or eggplant, you'd want them to be cooked. And you maybe add a little cheese if you like, some herbs, seasoning, pour egg over it, and bake it in your oven. So it's basically a baked omelet. And you can have it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then you can have leftovers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can do different greens and herbs in your salads. So I think be adventurous with this. I think maybe 20 years ago, if anyone told us that we were going to all be eating the stuff that was garnish at salad bars, it would be a very trendy food, we'd be like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. But that's what kale is. And everyone eats kale. Very common now. It's very popular food. People make salads, put it in smoothies, kale chips. So it's okay, try new things. We're all typically surprised by what we like. So you can use different fruits and herbs to flavor water or tea or seltzer. This is where I use my strawberry tops. There's always a bag of strawberry tops in my freezer. I'm very lazy about how I trim strawberries. I take big chunks of the top off. I don't hull them real perfectly because I want that little piece, because I'm going to add water to it. I'm going to add it to my water and flavor my water. I like to do strawberry basil water. You could do strawberry mint. Tea, I like pineapple and ginger. Seltzer, you can do the same sorts of things. So this is a great way to use up those scraps or things that you're wondering if you're going to get around to using them up before they go off. People like honeydew and cucumbers as well. So, and the other thing with the fruits and vegetables is just to go ahead and eat them. You can use the hummus or yogurt dip if you like, but there's nothing really stopping you from just biting into a peeled, cleaned carrot. It might look like Bugs Bunny, but you're having a good snack and you'll feel pretty good. I just want to take a pause for a minute and see if I can ask anybody, you said they're in South Paris, if they had any questions. I see someone talking, I'm not even, can they ask us?
They can unmute themselves, but I don't know if they...
Okay. I just wanted to give them the opportunity to.
They might just be talking amongst themselves.
Oh, they don't even know that I'm watching?
Oh, no, they do. They do.
All right. So here's, you have all of these recipes in front of you, but I also think that it's okay to go ahead and play with these a bit. So this is a spinach salad with red pepper dressing. What's nice about this is the salad itself. There's a recipe here, but really you can add and subtract to salads very easily. If you wanted to throw some radishes in, that'd be fine, or shredded carrots, that's easy. But this dressing also uses some fresh produce in the dressing itself. So it calls for a roasted red pepper, which you can make at home. You don't need to buy those in a jar. So what you would do with that is put it in your boiler on your grill till it blackens, cover it so it steams, and then you can peel that black part off and you have a roasted red pepper. So that's something too that's worth considering for food storage, because you can freeze those. But this just gets These things at the bottom just get buzzed up in a blender and poured on your salad. You can also try this kind of dressing with tomatoes instead of the peppers if you'd like. Or even fruit. Like if people like those raspberry dressings, do something like that. I love things like this, these one-pot meals. Once I get my kids to bed, I have very little energy to clean my kitchen. So this is wonderful if it's just one pot. But you can see right here, there's very few ingredients. It's pork chops, a cut up apple, onions, Brussels sprouts. All of those are really adding flavor to the pork chop. So it's all done in one dish, quick and easy. And here's the rhubarb crisp. What's kind of interesting, I think, about this one is that it takes for different seasons. With the rhubarb and the apples, they kind of tend to just miss each other, but if you save some of your rhubarb, baking it in the oven, it can be very forgiving if you have frozen rhubarb, for example. So this one right here, you're taking that tart rhubarb and sweetening it with the apples mostly, and you can enjoy a large portion of your fruits. And rhubarb is botanically a vegetable. I was talking about this before everyone came in here. Pretty much the only botanical vegetable that we treat like a fruit. We have lots of botanical fruits that we treat as vegetables, tomatoes, squash, things like that. But rhubarb's the only one that does it in reverse.
So what if you didn't want any splendor? What could you substitute that with?
You could do sugar.
How much?
I would go 1 for 1. Maybe try to cut it down to like a 2 tablespoons.
Really?
Maybe. You can
Splendor's
taste.
really sweet, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be very, very sweet. So maybe cut it down to 2 or 1.5 tablespoons. So that would be 1 tablespoon and 1.5 teaspoons. And taste test it. Get everything else mixed together and then put the sugar on and see how it tastes. If it tastes like it needs more sugar, if it's too tart, then it might need more sugar. You could play with it too. I think brown sugar would add an interesting flavor because it has that kind of burnt sugar flavor, which I think would cut the tartness from the rhubarb really nicely. And you may be able to get away with using less of it. A lot of people like to, with a dish like this, to work with a concentrated juice. So those are the ones that you find in the frozen section. They tend to, because there's so much sugar in them, they tend to stay pretty syrupy. Even when they're frozen, you can scoop them into things. It's still a sugar, though. I think it's important to notice that these are still sugars. So it's worth making sure you don't go too far. Oh, there's brown sugar in the recipe. I missed that. So you can probably use like regular sugar and honey. Might be interesting. Maple syrup. Blue with the apples.
Breadcrumbs and olive oil would be 2 things I would not think would be in that recipe.
Yeah. I would look for a whole wheat breadcrumbs. I think it would have a better flavor.
Or even oatmeal.
Yeah,
I think
Rolled
oatmeal
oat,
would be
yeah.
better.
I do rolled oats.
Mm-hmm.
This is I didn't find this recipe. It's an interesting one. I'm kind of curious about it now.
Yeah. 'Cause I've got tons of rhubarb and I need to do something with it.
Give it to me. Give me some, I love
I
it.
like strawberry rhubarb crumble. Eating Well has good crumble recipes.
Who does
Eating Well, yeah, they
Yeah.
have very good crumble recipes. That was the one where I learned about using the concentrated juices that they do. So that's a good one there. I like that one. Eating Well for desserts, they do a really good job, I think. Cooking Light does nice, approachable, healthy recipes too, without going too overboard or using too much artificial sweeteners, and they're approachable too without using things like condensed soup. Like, they're easy recipes and they're still made with real food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think this is our last. So basically, it was a salad, dinner, and dessert for the recipes. So you have your next dinner party.
I'll try the pork chop one. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of recipes too out there for sheet pan dinners that would be take a similar approach. too, where you could use up a lot of vegetables that way.
Mhm.
You just, whatever you have for a protein with your vegetables, roast, and most vegetables taste better roasted. You throw them on a sheet pan. I like 425, that's my temperature.
Always for roasted vegetables.
Always,
Yeah.
425. And basically what you do is adjust the size of how you cut your vegetable to your protein. So if you're cooking salmon, cut everything real small. If you're cooking like chicken thighs, you can keep things a bit bigger because they're going to take longer to cook. Yeah. Oh, and soup. I forgot about the soup. So I liked, what I like about this recipe is actually it seems really forgiving and you can make some swaps. Butternut squash you could swap out for any other winter squash or probably even a sweet potato. You could use white beans instead of garbanzo beans. So basically this is an opportunity to use what you have on hand to make some soup. It's good basics. I don't see why not. Throw in some shredded zucchini. I know I always joke about zucchini. Everyone has to use up. Those ones are great for the fritters though. The shredded up zucchini in a fritter. And you can shred zucchini and put it in anything. This is a great way to sneak vegetables in for picky children or husbands. I learned a lot about that when I was at WIC. But you know, you could hide zucchini in just about anything that way. Just shred it up. It fits into a quesadillas really well for kids, or stuffed shells, for example, meatloaf, anything. Yep. So here's some other resources for recipes. That you can go to. But I also think just typing in recipe for rhubarb is going to help you out. You're going to find some good things. I think to find a good recipe online, make sure it's really clear and easy to read. If they're not telling you exact details, then they may not be testing them. Or running them through an appropriate type of testing. Like they might be testing them and eating them, being like, oh, this is fine. It works. And then you go home and you try yourself, and it's confusing. So it's there's lots of blogs with lots and lots of text, and then at the bottom there's the recipe. Just scroll through the text and read the recipe. So in summary, there's lots of local options, even here in the Northeast. Farmers are very innovative people, so they're constantly finding new ways to grow foods. In all honesty, a lot of the produce that comes into stores that would normally seen as summer foods, that they're year-round, like peppers, tomatoes, those things are grown in Canada or Holland. That's north of here. So, we might start to see local farmers taking on similar approaches. There's backyard farms in Madison that grows everything in a hoop house. They actually keep bees in the hoop house. You have to kind of like sign waivers saying you're not allergic to bee stings.
Oh, is
Because
it
you will get
cross-pollination of them? Of
Yeah.
the,
Yeah. So there's lots that farmers are doing, and there's lots we can do at home too to just make the most of what we have. We can make dishes ahead and freeze them. So if you're going to make like a veggie enchilada, make two, and throw those shredded zucchini in.
My favorite is winter squash, but I don't want to pay a lot of money for it, so I wait and till it goes on. They have it at the local farmers market. Like it'll be 99 cents a pound or $1.29 a pound in the store, but then it's like 39 cents a
because
pound.
they want to get rid of it, and they've got huge bins of them.
Well,
Yeah.
I go to a farmer's market and I buy 10 pounds of it and I roast it and then I freeze it so I can eat it all winter, because squash is my favorite, but I don't like frozen squash that's made by Stouffer's or something. It's
Right.
So
like
it's all
slimy.
watery and
Yeah.
So I roast it myself
yeah.
and I do it every year. I
That's
buy
a great
like 10
idea.
pounds of it.
Yeah, I end up making pureed squash and apple soup a lot. That's a really good eating well recipe,
Okay,
yeah.
that sounds
You
good.
roast everything in a pan,
Mhm.
and then run it through your blender.
And then do you add any liquid to it, or?
Little chicken stock. Yeah.
I take my squash and I put it like slice it in half
Mhm.
and put it face down in a pan with water and butter.
Yeah.
And then I let it cook just till it starts to caramelize.
Yeah.
And then I take it out and I scoop it out of the skin so I don't have to peel it.
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
scoop it
that's
out.
the worst part about
That's
squash.
the worst part
Yeah.
about squash.
Yep.
And it's it's
Every fall I consider a meat cleaver, not for meat, but for getting through pockets.
yeah.
I'm just afraid of storing it with my small children.
I remember when I was growing up, my father would bring in blue Hubbard that would be like this big. We'd have to use an axe.
Those are delicious.
I don't know that I've ever eaten one of those.
They're
Oh,
beautiful
they're-
too.
They are beautiful.
Yeah.
Huge though.
Wow.
Don't peel them.
I had more to my summary, but I think we kind of ran into chatting and I lost track a little bit there. So, but yeah, it's clear that you guys, have things that you're already doing at home. I think sharing them with each other too, sharing ideas is a really great way to learn too, because you also learn from someone who's actually tried it instead of just read about it somewhere. So, but yeah, there's lots we can do to make the most of our produce. There's lots we can find nearby. But really trying to eat seasonally is going to be, it's going to save you money. It's going to give you the best tasting options that you can find. And, you're going to, if you can get things local, you're also going to keep keeping those dollars in the community.
One more question about the local. So a local farm, does that mean that it's organic farming or it's not necessarily, and it should be labeled that way if it is?
So to get the organic label, so Maine has its own, but there's also the standard organic labels. But you have to pay money to have that evaluation done.
Okay.
And a lot of small local farms just can't afford it. They can't swing the cost of that.
So they may be
So they
farming
may be-
organically, but
Yeah, they may,
just don't have that seal.
just don't have that seal.
Okay.
So it's a good, that's when it's a good, to get to know your farmer. Go ahead and ask them these questions. They might be able to say to you, yeah, we follow every organic practice there is. We just can't justify the cost of the evaluation.
Okay.
Yeah, there's other things like that, like when you see gluten-free labels in stores, somebody paid for that to be tested and to have regular testing. So that's why, if you see something and you're like, well, of course it's gluten-free. But if it's a product that might be made in a facility, oh, they left. Probably standing over here, but if it's made in a facility that might even touch wheat, then customers who have to avoid gluten are going to question it. So,
Yeah, because that can be dangerous for people that
yeah.
can't have gluten.
So if it's a product that makes spice blends like chili starters and things like that, they might have a thickening agent in there and they need to verify that that's not gluten. So investing in that gluten-free label for the spice mix makes sense for them, but it might not make sense for them for their oregano. If that, yeah. Yeah, all of those labels cost money. There's no publicly funded third party for that, so unfortunately. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me, turn on.
We're a little ahead of schedule.